I am open bag now for 2025, which means I have all of these discs to choose from. I'm going to be going to the field and showing you guys a little bit of what I'm throwing. I'm throwing a lot more of like Innova drivers. I'm throwing the Destroyer, Thunderbird, T-Bird 3, things like that. Some of my slow discs are staying the same. I'm trying some MVP kind of throwing putters. Trash Panda was also nice enough to send me a box of discs. It has some of their new prototype mid-ranges, or really just one prototype mid-range, the Canyon. So I'm super excited to try that. I've already felt it a little bit, and it's a mold that I think I will really like. Goliath Discs also sent me a package. Probably a brand you guys maybe have never heard of, but shout out to Josh. Thanks for sending me a box. I already been throwing one of the discs of those that I've actually been really liking. So I'm excited to try out the other ones and see how they fly. But mostly stuff I've thrown from the past, like Destroyers, Justice, things like that. And then some new stuff in a couple of the slots. But let's cut right over to the field and I'll show you guys all of these discs. So for 2025, I have a few putters that I'm working with. My putting putters for sure are going to be the BT Hard Shield from Westside. As most of you know, I played for Latitude 64 for 5 years. They were my first sponsor. They were my longest sponsor. And I putted with these shields for pretty much that whole entire time. I started putting with them about 6 months in, and I just love them. All my best performances, all my top disc golf pro tour finishes, my third at Worlds were all with these putters. These putters were actually the ones that I putted with for the last season I was with Latitude. So, you know, I really love these things. There's nothing really like them. So these are for sure going to be stuck with as my putting putter for as long as I can see, really. And then the throwing putters are where some things are going to change. So some putters I'm messing with right now are the Proxy and the Envy from MVP. Right now I have an Eclipse Proxy and a Proton Envy. I'm looking, and I have a few in the mail, but Neutron versions of both of these. Right now this Proton Envy is super overstable, and this Eclipse Proxy is just a little bit soft, so once it gets a little bit warmer, I think I'm going to struggle with just the softness of it, but the flight is perfect. It was absolutely money for me last week at Shelly Sharp. A few of the putters that I was throwing last season, or approach discs, are the Breaker and the Zone. I still love both of these discs, but recently I haven't been able to throw many forehands. As some of you know, I've was battling kind of an elbow/shoulder injury through the back half of last season. I got a lot of PT work done, and it was feeling a lot better, and then I took some time off through the winter to try to heal that even more, and it just hasn't really gotten better. So I'm actually getting a second opinion on that pretty soon. So right now the Zone, just I don't really need it because it's a really good forehand disc, but I think there's some better ones for backhands, honestly, and the low profile is just a little bit too low profile for me. And then I love the Breaker, but I have been wanting something that just goes a little bit further, which the Proxy has kind of been filling. Last one is the P3X. This Glow Ironstone is pretty overstable, and I think I want to try a straighter one. The one thing that I don't like about the Breaker is it has an unpolished bottom, so it's just a little bit slick on the bottom, especially when my fingers get a little bit sweaty. And the P3X obviously has a smooth bottom. So I'm looking to get a few more overstable ones of these, but you know, kind of the Proxy or the Envy, the Breaker, and this P3X are all kind of fighting for the same spot. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a couple of these. A couple of these are more beat in. I'll throw the Breaker first and probably this Zone, and then I'll show you guys how these couple new ones are flying. I'm just gonna go pretty much straight out for all these, probably somewhere kind of around those poles or trash can. So, Breaker, slightly stable. Definitely a great flight. It flips up a little bit when I really connect on it. Here is the Zone, wherever I put it. Okay, this Zone. This one's a little bit beat up. It's the one I threw pretty much all of last year, so it has a little straighter flight, but I'm going to throw a little bit of Anheuser on it. So, little baby Annie fades out at the end. Pretty money flight, honestly. This Proxy next is really what I loved this past weekend at Shelly Sharp. It did me super well on a lot of approaches, just dead straight. As opposed to fading at the end of the flight, it almost just does like a little late flip or a little finish to the right. So it's not like a flippy putter. Like, it's pretty torque resistant, but it just doesn't have that fall off left at the end. It almost falls off right. Dead straight flight. And then see that little bit right at the end. It just like almost goes down to the right. That one, I do have a pretty good right to left wind, which obviously made that thing fall off to the left just slightly. But normally that thing just falls off barely to the right. These last two are really overstable, honestly, more overstable than I'd like, because I do have a Justice, and I'll get to this in my mid-ranges, but this really fills that super beefy, overstable, like skip shot slot. And these, although I think if I got them beat up, they'd be really good, I think some just different plastics or different runs of the Envy and the P3X would probably be more what I'm looking for. I'll go with the Envy first. A little bit of Annie on this one too. So see that thing just fight out so hard. I mean, pretty good anhyzer on that, and it just like immediately starts fighting out. This P3X is pretty similar, but where that Envy kind of dies towards the end of the flight, this P3X definitely like pushes more at the end. Little Annie. And see, so much flex, but that last third of the flight, it just really pushes. And so I think if I found one of those, probably an older run of S-Line, that is just a little bit straighter in flight, that's not quite as overstable, I would really love it. I do have a bunch of other zones and breakers, but I really don't think those are gonna be in the bag right away. But I do love the disc. I have also messed around, I didn't mention, but I used to throw the Shield as well. And so I have this base plastic one. It's a little bit more of like a traditional putter, where it has that like slow flight, kind of stable. I'll throw this one too to show you guys what it's about. Kind of just a flat shot with this one. A little bit of hyzer, but see, it just kind of flip up. Not really much fade, not really much turn, just kind of that general straight flight that you're used to seeing from a putter. For my mid-ranges now, my mid-ranges have stayed pretty much the same for 2025. They're pretty much the same as I was throwing in 2024. I do have one new one, like I mentioned, is the Justice. This is one of the molds that I just really loved when I was playing for Latitude, and it's just super overstable. Gonna finish hard left or right every single time. Obviously, I said I'm not throwing forehands right now, so mostly just finishing super hard left, flexes or hyzer, skip shots, things like that. It's absolutely money. The Parker Welk Quake is one I've been really loving. This one has gotten a little bit straighter, so it almost flies like my buzzes, but it just has a little bit more stability at the end, and it handles wind a little better or a little bit of flex. And then I have 3 buzzes in the bag. This one is just an old Memorial stamp, pretty stable-ish for a buzz. This one my friend Colin gave me. This one's just dead straight. And then I have this other buzz that my friend Dawson gave me. This one was super, super understable right when he gave it to me, like hyzer flip, turn, like crazy flippy. And then now it's just kind of hyzer flip to straight. I don't really know what happened, but it flies great now. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be sticking with buzzes and quakes for 2025. A lot of people have told me to try like the Hex or a couple of other discs from like MVP that kind of have a similar flight. But I think, you know, I've been loving the buzz. It's one of the discs that did me really well last season, so I think I'm going to stick with it. We'll go Justice first. Super overstable. I'm going to go Annie on this one. Just super beefy, skipping left, even after the Annie release. Everyone knows the Justice. That's just what it's really good at. Quake, I'm gonna go just hammer it flat. Again, I do have a pretty good like cross tailwind here, so I'm just gonna throw this hard and flat and let it just kind of, you know, push straight with a good fade. And a little fade, yep. pretty typical flight out of a Quake. That one's a little bit straighter than Quakes traditionally are, but it's really filling a money slot for me right now. Now for a couple buzzes. I'm gonna throw the stable one first. This one I'll throw just pretty much flat and let it kind of do its thing. That's a buzz for you. Just straight. That's pushing pretty hard left at the end, but mostly just because of the wind. But stable flight, that one I can even flex a little bit. This one is a little bit straighter. Pretty much the same flight, but that last third, it just starts to go straight, as opposed to the blue one fades off to the left. And then this one should be out of the same flight or same release, should just drift a little bit to the right. This is also probably the fastest of all of them. Most distance, for whatever reason, I think it's a little older run and it just has a lot of push. So same shot, and then there it goes. Off to the right. Pretty solid lineup there. There are a few discs that I want to show you. First ones are from Trash Panda. Sent me this nice box. I have already opened it, full disclosure. I couldn't really keep my hands off it. I got this about a week ago. Haven't really got to try them out yet. Nice little welcome letter. Hope you enjoy. Thanks, Jesse. All of these discs are fully recycled. I'm sure you guys have seen some stuff about Trash Panda, but super cool things they're doing. I met Jesse in an airport actually a few years ago and haven't been able to try the discs because I've obviously had a disc sponsor. So I'm super excited to try some of these out. I haven't got to throw any of these yet. There are 5 discs he sent me. He sent me 2 of these prototype canyons. These are both pretty gummy, so I'd love to, see what these are gonna be when maybe a more stiff plastic comes out, but I noticed some of these other plastics from Trash Panda are also softer. I have this inner core, which is their like straight throwing putter. And then I have a couple of their ET drivers, the ET1 and the ET2, which is a driver where this side's a 14 speed and this side is, I believe, like a 7 speed or a 6 speed. So super interesting disc. I'm curious to see how these fly, but I'll throw these with the drivers. I'll throw the putter now because I forgot that, and then I'll also throw these 2 mitts. All right, inner core first. This one is 166. I don't really know how this is gonna fly, so I'm just gonna throw it kind of flat-ish, maybe a slight hyzer. Wow. There's never been a straighter flight on a disc than that. That was pretty impressive. I'd love to maybe see what a max weight one would do. I would bet it flies pretty much the same, but I'd just be worried in the wind for, some inconsistency with that. But super straight disc, honestly, flew really great. Now I have these 2 canyons. These were also a collaboration with Protoflight. And Protoflight makes CNC discs. So they start with kind of just a bulk rim or kind of just an XL disc, and then they carve it out, carve all the plastic out. And so they helped Trash Panda make basically these prototype molds, because prototyping discs can be really expensive with injection molding. And actually Protoflight is gonna send me a couple of their discs because I wanna try out the CNC. So be on the lookout for some cool stuff with that. But for now, Trash Panda Canyon, overstable. I'm gonna throw these 1 flat and probably 1 on anhyzer. Oh, wow. Oh, that's so nice. And I think the way that these were molded is these are, there's no weight on these because they're prototypes, but I think Jesse mentioned that these have a lower, because they're small diameter, pretty small diameter actually, I think they have a lower max weight, like closer to 170-ish. I'm not sure what these are. And I know he's done a bunch of videos about him redesigning a few of these, or redesigning the Canyon. That's going to be a slightly different mold. So I'll be excited to see what that flies like when that comes out. I'm going to throw this one probably on a slight ante and see how it behaves. yeah, that one I think is maybe a little bit more stable. I don't know if there's any difference. Let's see on the card. No, he didn't say anything. So I don't think there's any difference between those two, but just slightly different shape. One is a little flatter, one's a little domier. And yeah, I'm super excited to see how that flies. So those, again, I think are probably a little too soft to make my bag, but definitely want to try them out. I have a few mids from Goliath discs as well, I think. So that's a putter. Should probably throw that. Okay, so I have a few mids. I don't really know how any of these fly. These two are called the Samson. These I think are pretty overstable. They look kind of like that Anvil Justice type disc, but they're wide diameter, which I think is kind of odd. I prefer my discs, my overstable mids, in a small diameter. So we'll give these a try first. I also have this kind of slower approach disc, kind of seems like a zone. Wow. Thanks. That is so overstable. I was absolutely expecting overstable, but that was just like super beef. Probably more overstable than my Justice. This one's base plastic. We'll give that a try. So beefy. Almost too overstable, honestly. They don't quite have a straight push. Where the Justice, I feel like, can get some distance out of it. Those were really just like hook stable, super beefy. I've got this kind of zone-like disc. We'll give that a go. Jesus. Huh. I was expecting straighter than that. That was like a Zone OS. Don't think I'll be bagging that one. Now, a couple other ones they sent me. I have a Redemption and 2 Jiraiya's. I hope I'm saying that right. Probably not. Redemption feels like kind of like EMAC Truth from DD. Wider diameter though, I think. Oh, and it's flippy, but kind of stable. That flew just like the EMAC Truth. Not the type of disc I tend to like. The faster mid that, like you kind of saw there, it almost like flips up and flies like a fairway driver and then fades at the end. So it's like flippy and fadey. It doesn't have like a straight flight, and that's just not something I tend to love. I'm gonna pass on throwing the second. Oh wait, no, that's a different mold. Jiraiya. I'll throw the premium plastic one. Don't know how this is gonna fly. It feels understable. And it is more overstable. Okay, was not expecting that. So that's kind of part of trying new discs. Again, I haven't thrown any of these Goliath discs besides one that's in my bag. And yeah, I just wasn't expecting those flights. Fairway drivers are where I'm pretty much fully set on my bag. I don't think this is really gonna be changing much. There could be a few variants in kind of the slower discs, but right now I have a Vortex, which is strictly for rollers, basically. I have 2 Leopard 3s, which are gonna be kind of like my straight to understable fairway driver. I'll probably only end up bagging one of these, but this Leopard 3, it's old Drew Gibson Tour Series one, is actually just like really straight, almost flies like a T-Bird 3. But I've really been loving this Owen Scoggins one. I found it in a used bin and it's super flippy. Right now I have 1 T-Bird 3 and 1 Sagara. Shout out to AB for giving me this one. The Sagara for me is just slightly more stable than the T-Bird 3, but I've really been liking both. I think I'll probably throw the Sagara for now, but once it gets a little bit beat up, I'll probably move over to mostly just T-Bird 3s, but we'll kind of see how the test or the stock runs of Sagara comes out too. I may end up throwing that. I also just got a few more T-Bird 3s from my buddy Reese. He gave me Star, a couple Metal Flakes. This one's for my friend Colin. It's a Halo, and then just kind of an old Ricky T-Bird 3. So definitely want to throw these and see how these fly. but the T-Bird 3 is definitely going to be here to stay, I think. More overstable fairways, I have the Avalanche from DJA. This is one of the few discs that made it in the bag from last year. This is just a really overstable fairway driver, kind of like Firebird, but this one I think is probably a little bit more glide than a Firebird is. Kind of more like that FAF run that everyone loves from the Firebird. And then the other Goliath disc that is in my bag is the Goliath disc Chainbreaker. And this thing is like between a Firebird or Avalanche and a Tilt. It is super, super overstable. It's kind of just a more usable version of the Tilt. It really does just kind of fight downwards, but it gets a little bit more flight or a little bit more speed than the Tilt normally does. And then kind of hybrid fairway drivers is the Thunderbird. This one is technically Pro line, but kind of feels more like Star, and then a Champion. This was probably my favorite disc before getting sponsored by Latitude like 6 or 7 years ago. And it probably still is my favorite disc. I absolutely love this thing. It's useful at low speeds, it's useful at higher speeds, and it really just fills a big hole in my bag that I feel like I didn't have a good grasp on last year. Last year I was just throwing the Avalanche and the Bonsai, and I just really couldn't find something that fills this slot. So I won't throw the Vision as my roller, but I'll throw a few of these other ones so that you guys can see the flight. First one, I'll go Leopard 3. This one, like I said, is like my flippy, just understable hyzer flip disc. Would never throw it in the wind that I have right now, but you should get a good idea of the flight. Flip up, turn, kind of falling. I threw that one a little bit high, so it's actually getting some fade at the end, but fairly typical flight. Normally that would hold a little bit more to the right. Now for this Leopard 3, this thing, like I said, is pretty overstable, so I'm actually going to throw this on a little bit of anhyzer. See, and then nice drift. Wind kind of caught that one. Normally that'll fight out a little bit, but with the right to left wind, it just kind of held right, as a Leopard 3 normally would. Now, Sagara and T-Bird 3. I'll throw this T-Bird 3 first. Like I said, I think the Sagara is a little bit more overstable than the T-Bird 3. At least this one is that Anthony gave me. Should see a pretty straight flight out of these. Little turn, throw it a little high. Good flight though, nice straight flight. Pretty stock, you know, fairway driver everyone wants. Just dead straight, can throw it in any wind, very usable. Sagara I'm gonna throw on the same line so you guys get the idea. See, pretty similar flight, but it just doesn't get that drift to the right, and then it has a little bit more fade at the end. Pretty similar distance though, you know, not really much difference. That's why I'll probably just kind of choose between one or the other of the Sagara and the T-Bird 3. Two overstable fairway drivers. I'm gonna throw both of these more on a hyzer line so you guys can see the stability. Just super stable. Hard finish to the left, and then here is where you're going to see how stable this Chainbreaker is. See, that thing just pretty much flies straight down. Not really any distance potential, but it's super great for spike hyzers or where you have to throw it higher and just kind of get it to bite downward. Last up is these Thunderbirds. I'm going to throw this Pro one first. It actually hit some gunite this past weekend, so we'll see. I'm not sure if the flight's really changed at all, but I would really like this to be straighter, so I'm kind of glad it hit something. Good kind of hybrid driver, so I'm just going to hammer this hyzer, kind of flip up to flat. Yep, that's the flight we're looking for. Hyzer, flip up to flat, a little bit of fade, a little bit more distance than the T-Bird 3. And then this one It's a little bit more overstable, so I'm going to throw this a little bit flatter. A little more stable, and it's just moving left kind of the whole way. Pretty typical flight with Thunderbirds there, pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Before we get into the distance drivers, I'm going to throw these kind of the hybrids between the two. These Goliath discs, or not the Goliath discs, sorry, the Trash Panda ET1 and the ET2. I forget which one is each. This is the ET1. I really like the feel from kind of gripping my pointer finger with the smaller part and the back of my hand with the bigger part of the rim. That feels really comfortable. I have no idea how these are going to fly, so I'm just going to kind of throw them on a slight hyzer and see what they got. This is the ET1. Stable, really overstable. Pretty much no flip up, even in that wind. Very interesting. Okay, this ET2, a little bit heavier, so I should expect a little bit more overstability. I'm gonna go a little bit flatter with this one. And that one is way flippier. I needed to throw those on opposite angles. Very interesting disc. I'll have to do a more in-depth video on those two and see, what the actual flight is like, and if, gripping the rim at different widths actually makes a difference. As for my real distance driver lineup, I'm basically just working with destroyers and PD2 is my full lineup. I have a few different variations of what are basically destroyers. Like I have a cloud breaker in this one. I found it in a used bin. It's pretty flippy. I've been rolling it or using it for like hyzer flips to turn. I also have an Emperor. Friend Colin gave me this. This one is an old Kona run, super pop toppy, overstable, but really just a bomber, slightly stable still. And then I have some destroyers, kind of a varying stability. These two are a little bit more understable. These are more overstable. I found this run of white ones. They're all around 170 pop top, and these things just crush. I have a newer run Halo. This one's a little bit flat, so it's just a good like hyzer flip kind of throwaway bomber destroyer. And then I have a Dyed and a Halo, and these are both just pretty overstable. No real flip up, just kind of long straight or kind of flat push and then overstable at the end. And then I have a PD2, which is just for spike hyzers, flex shots, super overstable distance driver. I'll go ahead and start with this cloud breaker. Again, this is kind of my flippy one. This is gonna be out of a hyzer flip and it should turn. Big turn and flex, pretty much a hold to the right the whole entire time. A little bit of finish right at the end. Basically just a bomber. Now, this is my real bomber destroyer. This thing goes super far. I threw this thing, I don't know, probably 550 almost on one of the holes this past weekend at Vista. Just gonna crush this one. Pretty stable still, so reliable probably in any wind, but just a ton of distance, goes super far. Next is kind of flat Halo. Basically just similar flight to that last one, probably not quite as much distance, but really just a disc that I'm more okay with losing, maybe even a flippier flight sometimes as well. Nice flip up, money, a little bit of fade. Very usable, same spot as the last one. Now, super pop top Emperor. This thing, I thought it was gonna be flippier than it actually was, or actually is. So I'm gonna throw this one on a little bit Annie and just go for like a pretty big distance shot. See how far I can throw it. Big turn, but so much stability at the end. just would not expect that much stability. It flies so good. My friend Colin gave it to me though, so I'm a little bit scared to lose it, which is why I have a few other discs that fly pretty similar. That Emperor is kind of between those two bombers and then this stable kind of dive destroyer. This one I'm gonna throw flatter than I threw those other ones. Straight flight, and then pretty good hookup right at the end. Exactly what you're looking for in a destroyer. Now for this Halo one, I'm just gonna throw this on a similar line I did to the last one. This one's gonna be pretty beefy. Up there, no real flip up, and then just a strong fade right at the end of the flight. Last one for distance drivers that are for sure in my bag. This is PD2, super overstable one. I have a few other ones that my friend Reese gave me. I also have a few other destroyers in here that I probably want to try out. There's a few, well, this is a dyed one, same as I already have, but my friend Reese gave me these two. This is a Paul Macbeth 4-time. This one just feels super stable. The wing is super high. And then I have kind of a fresh Calvin Halo destroyer that's also super overstable. So after I throw this PD2, I'm going to throw a couple destroyers and a couple more PD2s I have as well. PD2 I'm going to throw on a little bit of Annie. More flat. More flat than anything. But you guys get the idea. You already knew before I threw the disc. Super overstable. Now, a couple beefy distance drivers. Fresh Pablo, or not fresh, old Pablo destroyer, super stable. Anheuser. Oh yeah. That thing's sick. Oh my gosh, that flies so good. Oh, that went so far too. All right, that one's probably in the bag. Thanks, Reese. I'm gonna hold off on throwing the Calvin Halo. I actually want to throw, this is a 168 Star Destroyer that is apparently pretty stable. So I'm gonna rip this one. I'm gonna really go pretty hard on this throw. And wow, that's beefy. Goes so far though. Okay, didn't give that one enough credit. Flew way more stable than I thought. Throw a couple PD2s, got a Skyrider and just an old Sea Line, it seems like. Apparently the Skyrider is more stable. I thought these were always kind of like a straighter run of PD2, but apparently they're pretty stable. Kind of flat flight or flat release, expect a hyzer. Okay, so definitely a little bit more of like a bomber run of PD2. That one had a little bit of flip up, but then it had a lot more fade. So probably similar flip up to some of my destroyers, but then way more fade on the end. This PD2, however, should just be really stable the whole way. Got to go Anheuser with this one. Yep. That is really beefy. Really stable. I kind of shank Annie'd that one too. So unfortunately, camera cutout didn't catch the last part of the distance drivers or when I was talking right to the camera here. But basically what I was saying is, you know, there's so much room for great discs, or there's so many great discs in disc golf, and a lot of times with our sponsors, we get limited to an extent. We get to throw a lot of great discs, but they're not necessarily the exact feel or the exact flight that we want. And so I'm really excited this year to get the chance to basically just throw exactly what I want. You know, there's so many discs on the market. I can choose exactly what disc I want to fill each slot. And I'm super excited about that. But part of that is, you know, obviously sponsors is a big part of how us players make money. And so without a major disc manufacturer sponsor, Most of my touring efforts are going to be supported by YouTube, which I'm going to be doing a lot more of this season, but then also mainly my virtual lessons and my in-person lessons. So if you're in the Scottsdale or Arizona area, come and do a lesson with me. I'd love to work with you, but if you're online or somewhere else in the country, check out FORMERO. That's where I have been doing all of my lessons. I'm now a partner with the FORMERO company, so we're working to build a great app. All of my virtual lessons are going to be housed there, and I've had a lot of great success over the winter helping people over the internet. It's such a great tool. So check all of my virtual lessons out there over on FORMERO, and just watch the channel, subscribe to or take a lesson if that works for you. I'd love to work with you, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for tuning in. I'll have a complete in the bag of everything settled down completely by Waco. Waco is going to be my first event, and I'll have something settled by then. But thanks for tuning in. Subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.